The FDA refuted the media and the medical establishment's claims otherwise. Hydroxychloroquine has been found to be so effective in a recent study that it cut the mortality rate in half for COVID. Now, one wonders how many lives have been lost due to this political teeth gnashing and purposeful politicization of the drug by some of President Trump's political adversaries. And it's a drug that's safe and has been used for decades and decades. And although the FDA still issues a warning about using the drug, two prominent doctors are now pushing for it to be offered in small over-the-counter doses. Now, here to tell us more is Dr. Simone Gold. She's a board-certified emergency physician working on the front lines during the pandemic, and Dr. Richard Urso, an ophthalmologist practicing in Houston, Texas. Dr. Gold, tell us about your plan and why it's so important to get this done fast.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me on the show. You know, I've been tracking the progress of this pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic for months, long before maybe January, February. And initially I was very excited about hydroxychloroquine, and it was very distressing that the media pounced all over this as though it wasn't a good option after the president endorsed it. So we've known for decades as physicians that hydroxychloroquine is safe, and the evidence is pouring in that it's also effective as well in early and in prophylactic treatment for COVID-19. You know, the president didn't pick hydroxychloroquine out of thin air. There was a lot of evidence to suggest that it would be helpful, and now that this evidence is coming in like a tsunami, it's going to be unstoppable. But because there's been so much politicization of the drug, I just suggest that we make it over the counter, simply like we do in the rest of the world.
Oh, I can hear them. I can hear heads exploding across the country tonight by your advocating for that. Now, I just want to remind everybody, this is what Dr. Fauci, okay, wants us to lock all down again, what he said about hydroxychloroquine back in May.
Clearly, the scientific data is really quite evident now about the lack of efficacy for it, and even the possibility that there could be, not could be, but there's, you know, the likelihood that under certain circumstances might be rare, but you'd see it, adverse events.
Well, I could hear plaintiffs' attorneys, if this were a practicing physician, with all the data we have now, Dr. Urso, the new Mount Sinai study that found it associated with reduced mortality as well as the Henry Ford study, that these comments about the drug seem almost akin to malpractice. How does Fauci, and why does Fauci seem to want to deny its efficacy, Dr. Urso?
Laura, thank you. You know, the political backstory I always have a hard time trying to figure out, but he's clearly wrong on what he said. Hydroxychloroquine is super safe. I'm particularly have a lot of experience with it. I've had several thousand patient visits to discuss specifically the toxicity of this drug over my last 30 years. It's super safe drug. It's safer than Tylenol, aspirin, Motrin. It's been around, you know, 1 billion prescriptions. In the largest analysis ever, there's probably 50 patient deaths in all time that have been attributed to this drug. So for him to make claims like that, the only thing I could say is he's right in some respects. If you give toxic doses, if you give 34 milligrams per kilogram instead of giving like 6.5, yeah, you probably will have adverse events. And in those studies he's citing, they gave massively high doses and what I would consider to be inappropriate doses. So I think if I can just add one little thing, Laura, it's that this QT interval that everybody's so scared of, the heart recharges every time it beats, and it recharges. And the only thing I can tell you is I've been working with this drug for 30 years, okay? And I've never had a patient taken off of it from a heart issue, all right? And I've went out of my way to talk to cardiologists about this over the last 4 months. Not a single one has ever taken a patient off for this reason.
I want to get into this. I don't mean to interrupt, but Dr. Gold, I have heard repeatedly that doctors who have pushed to prescribe this to patients, knowing it works and knowing it's safe, have been targeted. I mean, this is like a medical cancel culture applied to this particular medication. No one's saying it's a cure, by the way, but it reduces the viral load in all the patients that Dr. Smith has treated, most all the patients he's treated at an early level. The Turks have had incredible success, obviously in India and other countries. But doctors being targeted now and being threatened, Dr. Gold, what about that?
Well, for sure. I've absolutely, myself personally, experienced that. I know many doctors who've been targeted and threatened and sanctioned, risk losing their job. Absolutely, they're brought up by the state medical board. And I'll come close to saying, I'll come more than you, it is a cure. You know, if somebody says I could give you the best chemotherapy agent, or they give you the option of not getting cancer in the first place, I'll take the not getting the cancer. So you have to understand that the COVID disease is really two different problems. If you get the virus and you treat it early, it's one problem. But if you get it late and treat it late, it's a whole different disease. So hydroxychloroquine, given early, prophylactically treat it, prophylactically before you get sick, or for early treatment when you early are sick, it's very effective.
Doctor, so really quickly, Peter Navarro has pointed to the national stockpile of hydroxychloroquine, that needs to basically be moved out and used where the indication is to use where it's most effective. Is that a good sign?
Yeah, that's a good sign. I'm glad they're doing that. The problem is the fear factor for physicians of reprisals. So that's what we have to get past, the fear of reprisals, and also, you know, basically this misinformation campaign when they gave toxic massive doses has really tainted the drug in some respects. So we've got to get past those two issues. The drug is super safe in its normal doses.
The FDA, the president has got to step in here. The FDA is I mean, the good people there, I know, they're disserving him right now. I've got a frog in my throat
Agreed.
talking about this. All right, thank you so much, doctor. It's great to see you. And has Biden met a new public speaking enemy? We're going to show you how nature rained on his parade. And who do you think has more